Alrighty, well, welcome everybody. I really appreciate you being here for today's OtterTalk. Hope you enjoy your time and hope you learn something while you're here. We're going to have each of the guest panelists share information with them, and then we'll have questions that you, during the, while they're speaking, if you have questions, you can enter them on the chat function that's on the bottom of your screen. We'll have like share screen, chat, stuff like that. I'm not quite sure how your screen looks compared to mine, but you have a chat option somewhere on there. Also have a thumb up button where you can put thumbs up or clap or that kind of thing, or raise your hand if you have any questions that you need to ask during the speaking. Also, I want to let you know that none of us on this call are vets. So when it comes to veterinary advice, seek medical attention and all of that from a veterinarian, not from us. We're just people speaking about our experiences. So we are not veterinarians. Also, probably the best way to view tonight's OtterTalk is on speaker view. You should have a couple different ways that you can watch. You can watch on speaker view or gallery view. Gallery view will give you thumbnails of everybody. Speaker view will highlight the person that's speaking. And then you have a mute and unmute of your microphone. So during the meeting, if you'll keep it muted, and then afterwards, when we go through the questions that have been submitted on the chat feature, we'll go to open questions, and at that time, you can feel free to unmute. I think that's all of my controls. If you weren't able to attend our webcast the other night by Karen Munana, that is now available on the OtterhoundUniversity.com website. I watched it again last night, and it was really very helpful. I liked it a lot. So feel free to check that out if you haven't already. And tonight's OtterTalk is a follow-up to that, where we're going to talk with owners who have lived with dogs with seizures and gain some insight and coping strategies from them. We'll have them each tell us a little bit about themselves and about their Otterhound history, and walk us through what their seizure history has been like, and then any advice that they might have to share with us, any strategies, any resources, anything like that. So again, thank you all for being here, and we'll get started. Becky, I'm going to start with you, please. If you would please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. Okay. Well, I got my first Otterhound in 2002, and we've bred 6 litters of puppies. I've been a member of the club since we got Kendall, our first Otterhound, and love the breed, love being a breeder. We bred our last litter in 2014, and we decided that because we're getting older, we don't think we'll have another Otterhound. We'll be moving into something smaller, but still have our Wicket, who is 14 and doing well, going up and down the stairs, going for walks every day. I'm quite proud of her. She's quite into herself as always, and hasn't changed a bit as far as demanding what she wants. So that's about me. And then I'm gonna move on to talk a little bit about our experiences that we had. Speaking of Kendall, Kendall was always a dog that was very anxious about going in the car. And we didn't get her until she was an adult. She was 2+ when we got her, and she would always get so terribly car sick. And we couldn't go even a short distance without her getting car sick, and she was very anxious about that. And so I had tried everything that I could to help her with that. And finally, my vet recommended putting her on a drug called Chlorpromazine. And so we put her on that. And what I did not know was that that is a drug that is known to cause seizures. And she went to the vet, had a groomer in the in-house, And I took her there for grooming one day, and she was really unhappy when I left her. And they had put her in a room, which was, she was by herself, left by herself, and she was really unhappy about that. And had I not had to go to work, I probably wouldn't have left her. But anyway, she had her grooming, and then we went home, everything was fine. I picked her up, she was okay. But when I took her back the next time, she had a seizure as we walked in the door. And she was clearly very upset. And so obviously I was upset. So the next time I took her to the vet, as we started to walk in the door, she started to make some motions with her mouth, like she was going to go into a seizure. So I didn't take her in. And they came out and saw her outside, and she didn't have a seizure. And in fact, I decided not to take her back to the vet there again, ever. And I took her to the university, and they said, you know, the problem that she has is don't give her that drug. They recommended putting her on Xanax when she was going in the car, and she never had another seizure. And so just knowing, I think it's really important to investigate drugs that you're going to put your dog on, so that you know the potential. From what I've always heard is that Otterhounds have more of a tendency to possibly have seizures than some breeds. And so it would be really important to investigate the drugs. So both Acepromazine and Chlorpromazine, I guess, though they're supposed to help with nausea and vomiting, they also have this potential for causing seizures. And so it was so great because Xanax helped her live what would be a normal life. She could travel with us. We could take her on trips, which is what we always like to do with our dogs. And, you know, since then, Cerenia has come out for motion sickness. And so, you know, it's another drug that seems to help. And like Robin was saying, I'm certainly no veterinarian, and I can't make any recommendations about drugs or medications, but it's really important to investigate. And I know there are some other drugs that can also potentially cause seizures or be a part of seizuring in dogs. And so it's good to know and figure that out. So she never, again, had another seizure other than the one that she had when she went to the vet. But unfortunately, our second generation, Madison, though she was well, she produced 2 litters of puppies, and we got seizures in both of those litters. And it was obviously, as a breeder, it's one of those things that can just drive you away from breeding again. It's heartbreaking. And so Maddie's puppies, many of them, well, all of them were just amazing personalities. People told us how lovable, how very dear and sweet those dogs were. And Maddie herself was very dear and sweet. But it was terrible for us to get calls from people saying my puppy had a seizure. And one of the dogs we kept was Allie. And Allie was from Maddie's second litter. And she started seizing. You know, quite honestly, I can't remember exactly how old she was when she started to have seizures, but I remember the very first time she had a seizure, it was like she'd been struck by lightning. She blew up in the air and then fell down to the ground and started having a seizure. And one of the things that we discovered, or we felt was an issue, was that there were some stomach related things that we could kind of tell if her stomach was off. And so we did keep Cerenia around for her so that if she was seemingly getting an upset stomach, that could help her feel better. And I was really interested in what Dr. Munana had to say about cycles, because with Allie, after the first few seizures she had, she would have cluster seizures. And probably most of you don't know, we live up in the country far away from any kind of emergency clinic or place to go where we can get help quickly. And so it was, you know, taking a drive of an hour and a half with a dog in the back seat having seizures, and it was miserable. So I just have to tell you, it was very, very disturbing. And, you know, one of the things I think that people have to think about, and this is maybe going to sound awful, but you have to think about, how much money do I have that I can actually afford to spend on having this dog, you know, because we ended up with her in the hospital numerous times, several times, and, you know, for days. And it was, you know, there's nothing good about it. I can't say there's anything good about it. And so it's very, very hard. And I give credit to everybody who has to live with and deal with a seizing dog, whatever breed. So, you know, anything that you can do to keep them from having seizures, like watching the medications and watching to keep their, you know, whatever you observe about them, you're going to be the best expert on your dog. You're going to know better than any vet about certain things. So I guess that's about all I have to say. I am very interested in the research on CBD as an alternative medication for dogs. We did have Allie on Keppra and zonisamide, and the University of Wisconsin recommended that we put her on phenobarbital to start with, and we did, and we felt that her life she was just not herself at all. She just was really dopey and could barely stand up on that drug. So I could not leave her on that drug. And so putting her on Keppra, she was like herself. And the Keppra and zonisamide seemed to work for her for some period of time. And then it got to where it didn't work. So that was that.
How long did Allie live?
She died in March of 2014, and she was born in June of 2010. So she was almost 4.
Did the seizures play a part in her death?
Yes. She had continual seizures, and we just could not continue with that, so we had to put her down.
So even with the medication, she still continued to have seizures?
She did, but it was cyclical, like, you know, Dr. Munana said, but.
And then like
for
the litters of puppies that you had, did the entire litter have seizures or just a percentage?
No, it was about half in both litters.
And then will you spell Cerenia for me?
Cerenia.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other knowledge you want to share or resources or anything like that you want to share with us, Becky?
No, I did look up more information about the ACE and the chlorpromazine, and I also looked up some information about some of the flea and tick medications, which they have come out with some comments about some of those not being good for any dogs that seize or potentially could seize.
Yeah, I think it's important, and it's something that you don't really, if you don't have a dog that seizes, if you have no history with it, you don't even think twice about it. That's just something that you normally do without ever, giving it a second thought. Where once you do have a dog that seizes, you're much more, I think, conscientious about what the background of that medication might be. One thing to note too is that we're going to have our next Otter Talk is going to be with Joey Gregory on health issues, big and small. And I'm going to ask her if she will share with us anything that she can as far as what may have a propensity to cause seizures. Just so, if there's anything that she knows of. Because I know like even flea and tick collars can cause seizures in some animals as well. So I'm going to ask her to cover that as one of her topics, just for future reference. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Becky. I certainly appreciate that. Deanne Quist, we're going to call on you next. If you'll unmute your microphone and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okie doke. I am Diane. I have been in the Otterhound Club for 35 years. I've had 8 Otterhounds. 2 have had seizures. All my Otterhounds have been boys except for one of them, Patty, and she was my first Otterhound that had a seizure. She developed her seizures after she had a blockage eating a dog toy. So that was kind of the start of that. And her seizures were pretty easy. They weren't real often. They didn't last long. And pretty much just had a seizure and was out of it. Now Roger, he has seizures and he's going to be 9 in October, and he started at maybe 6.5 years having seizures. His are awful. They're just awful. He has his seizure, which is, of course, bad enough as it is. But the other part about a boy having seizures is that it goes everywhere. When they lose their bowels, it goes everywhere. So my rugs are all cleaned many times. And then the other thing, he goes blind after his seizures for about 20 to 30 minutes. He will, he's kind of panicky and he's blind. So I have taken everything out of my small little sunroom so he can just kind of do the walls in there. He's not going to get injured. And then after he does that, I try to get him outside, and he's always hungry, so I feed him. And sometimes after a seizure, sometimes he's like overly joyful. And when he gets that way, I know he's going to have another one. So, and if not, then he's tired and he'll go to sleep. But if he's overly joyful, it's a long night. And and I guess it made sense after Dr. Munana's talk. He always has his, like, I'd say between 1 and 4 in the morning. And like Becky, we've been to the emergency vet many times, but we only live, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes from there. So it's not difficult, but it is difficult getting him in a car. So he's got to come out of his seizure for me to get him into the car, because I can't do it. And again, the expense is a lot. I mean, every emergency vet visit, just to leave him there for a few hours is, $400 or $500, which goes through pretty quickly. What else? I've had him down to Kansas State to have an MRI. My veterinarian suggested that. And actually, Stefan, his breeder, suggested that when he first started having seizures. And that showed nothing, of course. So there was $1,800 of good information. What else? We've been on, well,
How often are his seizures?
he has, I looked it up in my book while Becky was talking. I keep a book of all his medications, when they're given, all that, so that I know that it's done. And I just looked up, he's had 14 this year, which doesn't sound that bad to me. It seems like a lot more. But the other part of it is I haven't slept in my bed since February. I sleep on an air mattress down here in the living room because if he has a seizure upstairs, he's blind. I can't get him down the stairs. We've already done that a couple of times. And I don't want him sleeping down here by himself. And so I have a bath towel always at the ready to put under him for when he starts urinating. And I gotta go let him. I gotta let him out. Hold on, I gotta let him out.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Diane, come back.
Okay, so that's the other part about it is when he has to pee, he has to pee. And, you know, Roger's been the best. They're all the best. But he has been the easiest dog to care for until all this happened. But like I say, if he has to pee, he pees. So every time he gets up at night, I get up to see what he's doing. Is he just circling around and gonna lay down again, or is he getting up? Does he have to pee? Because he'll just get up and pee, and it's a lot.
Diane, does he always lose control of his bowels every time? And I mean, how long do his seizures or fits usually last?
They last, I'd say a minute. I think the highest he's gone is 3 minutes, which is a lot. You know, like the thrashing about, is that the type of what you're talking? Yeah. Yeah, and he always loses his bowels. He doesn't always lose his, or he always loses his bladder. He doesn't lose his bowels.
Gotcha.
So.
Does he show any signs of like any precursors before he seizes, or does he show any sort of causes that you can pinpoint, like that you know one is coming on?
No, I don't. And I try to make something up, you know. You're always just grasping at what it could be and you want to find a trigger, but I haven't been able to find any. And like I said, he usually has them like between 1 and 4 in the morning. So he usually wakes me up when he has them. What else was I going to say? Oh, I did find a friend of mine that shows her golden retrievers directed me to a Facebook page that is epileptic performance dogs. So that's been really helpful. And you read those things and you think, oh, well, maybe I'll try that. And then you read again and like, well, that didn't work for that dog. And it just really brings to point that each dog is individual and this drug will work for that dog and it won't work for that dog. And, you know, they have this side effect or they don't. And so.
Have you tried any supplements or medications or anything like that with Roger?
Yeah, he's on, we started on phenobarbital. And then the EVET felt strongly that he should be on Keppra also. And so those two have worked really well. And then when he was I don't remember all this stuff because I don't like to remember bad things. But we added potassium bromide, and that was really bad. That was really, I mean, he could barely walk. So I was only on that for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 days. I did switch veterinarians. The veterinarian that I'd gone to like forever, he sold his clinic, and then they became one of the, I don't know, these groups that buy up veterinarians, and it just wasn't the same anymore. He didn't really, they didn't care. They really didn't care. So I switched veterinarians. The veterinarian that I go to now has a dog that has seizures. So he's very sympathetic and understands and is willing to really help me. So that's been good.
That helps a lot. Anything else that you can think of that you want to share?
I can't think of anything.
Well, thank you very, very much. I appreciate you walking us through that. Sue, we'll go to you next. If you would please unmute your microphone. We'll go to Sue Pluchak. Thank you for joining us, Sue. If you'll start out by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm Sue Pluchak. My husband and I live about 25 miles east of Denver, and I'm in a, sorry guys, I've been at Otterhounds for 10 years, and we have, our first one was Willie Mae. We got her 10 years ago, and she started seizing when she was about 2.5. She had one seizure, and it woke us up in the middle of the night. We had just gotten back from the Louisville Dog Show the day before, and took her right away to the vet the next day, and the vet wanted to just check and make sure, do blood work first before, we treat it as a seizure, idiopathic. So her thyroid was really low, and I don't remember numbers, what it was, but so she put her on thyroid meds, and Willie went about her life. I don't think it was 9-10 months later before she had another one. And when she'd have them, again, like Diane said, always in the middle of the night, 12, midnight, 1 o'clock. And they wouldn't last very long at the beginning, maybe half a minute. And then I think the second one and third one, there was maybe 6-7 months in between. So she wasn't really having them frequently. And we didn't medicate her right away for seizure meds at all. The vet said, let's just monitor her, see what's going on with her. And we noticed a pattern where she loved to go anywhere. It was always after we came back from a dog show. Even though she loved going, driving, going everywhere, it would be usually the day after we got home from a dog show, she would have the seizures. And she never had them at the shows or during, she just always loved to travel. So I think it was maybe a little over a year and a half before we started her on phenobarb, because they started coming a little more frequently, maybe every couple months. And, she did pretty good on the meds. There didn't seem to be any side effects. Still would have them every 2 to 3 months. And that went on for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half or so. And then we noticed, they started coming more frequently, and they would be lasting longer. Usually she would only have one, and then that would be it. Again, midnight, 1 in the morning. So then as they started coming closer together and more frequently, even though there was just one, we upped her phenobarb a little higher of a dose. And then I don't remember who sent it out, but it was an email. Dr. Jean Dodd, she's a vet who researches epileptic and seizures in dogs. And it's on her website, if you want to write that down, Robin. But it's about having, putting gelatin on their food. because gelatin's an anti-inflammatory, and it can help with epilepsy. So we thought, what the heck, we'll try it, see what happens. I don't know if it made a difference, you know, but she got a packet of gelatin on her food once a day. So, you know, she went on, and then we were noticing where she was having more than one seizure. She would have one, and then, you know, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes later, she'd have another one. And in the meantime, we had 2 other older dogs, non-Otterhounds, mixed breeds. And my Border Collie mix would always try to attack her during seizures. And one time we didn't even realize it till several hours later. He had tore her open under her armpit on her front leg. So it was like, okay, well, I guess he'll be sleeping behind closed doors from now on. So that never happened again. But the other dogs would go after her having seizures. So Willie lived about 6.5 years with them. Yeah, about 6.5. And towards the end, we also tried CBD oil, which I don't know if it helped. And we also put her on Keppra too, because she was having them more frequently. You know, at the end, it was probably about every 10 days, week to 10 days. And she would have, oh gosh, maybe 10 in a 24-hour period, but they'd last like 10 seconds. She'd lay over, kick her legs a couple times, sit back up, and come out of it. And then maybe an hour later, she'd do that again. So it was really tough there, you know, dealing with that, because it would happen after we would travel. And her last trip to Louisville was 2019, last year we took her. And she was at the show for 2 days, you know, in her kennel with the other dogs. And that night we got back to the hotel and she had a seizure. And so we left her back. Her and Getty stayed at the hotel, just in their kennels in the room. But, you know, like I said, the CBD oil, I don't know if that helped, because she really didn't have them lasting a long time towards the end. They were just really quick little ones. But it took away her hearing. She was deaf. Her back legs were very wobbly. And I don't know I think I'd heard that sometimes the medications can cause that. And I know we're close to CSU. It's just, you know, an hour or so away. And my vet had asked if we would be willing to go in on a study there, but they had to put them under for it. And we just decided that, you know, with her getting older and with the seizures, we just didn't want to have to put her under anesthesia. Luckily, she didn't have any other issues that, you know, we never had to do that. We avoided the flea and tick meds. You know, I don't know if they ever really affected her. When she did have, you know, after the first seizure, we decided, you know, we were going to get her spayed, because we noticed also that prior to coming in season would have a seizure. So we had her fixed. And, you know, at that point, she was still not having them that often. So, and that's kind of with ours, you know, there were different type that, you know, they were idiopathic, we think, but different, you know, amounts of time, or going from longer seizures to the shorter ones at the end. You know, don't know if the meds, the CBD, or all that. So but I think that's about all. And at the end, she had it lasted an hour, and we're like, no. So the vet was actually at her house giving vaccinations to my other dogs, and Willie had eaten dinner and, you know, just started in, and she just never came out of it. And she had never had one that lasted long like that. So, you know, she was 9 years old, and, you know, it's not fun to deal with. Can't hear you.
Horrible. It's horrible. Thank you so much for sharing it. I know how hard it is. It's horrible. And It's horrible to lose them in any fashion, but it seems like even more horrible when it's something like that. If there is such a
You know, we had a dog growing up when I was a child. We had a cockapoo, and that's when all those mixed breeds weren't, you know, designer breeds that just happened to be a cockapoo. And she had seizures, and hers were so different. She was on meds for, oh gosh, 10, 12 years, and rarely would she have one. And if she did, it was usually if we maybe missed giving her medication or it was off a little bit, but she never ever, you know, so then being experienced from it, you know, she'd thrash for a little bit, and I thought, well, you know, but Willie's were just, it was just different, you know, with Willie. So
It sounds like it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It breaks your heart. It's hard. This is a hard one, a hard topic to have, but I think it's really helpful. I think seizures, at least, especially like in the Black Russian Terrier world, so that's kind of the world I come from. I know the Otterhound people know that Otterhounds have a propensity for seizures. And in the Black Russian Terrier world, it's secret. So if a dog has a secret, nobody tells. So nobody shares that that dog had a seizure, and so there's no knowledge of it, and it's kind of like a dirty little secret. And so that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to have this OtterTalk, is that we can listen to medical information and advice and all that, and it's all very helpful. But I think this has a place as well. The icky part, you know, what it's like to deal with it, what it's like to survive it and have it be the day-to-day life of you and the dog that you love. So I appreciate all of you being here and telling your heartbreaking story. I really do. Tina, we'll go to you next. Tell us about you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So we are first-time Otterhound owners, and so we have 100% of Otterhounds we've ever had have had seizures. So Dewey is our Otterhound. He's a little over 6, I guess 6.5 years old now. He had his first seizure when he was nearly 3 years old. So we, at the time or I guess after his second seizure, which was maybe a month later, we took him to a veterinary neurologist. We live in the Milwaukee area. So we took him to a local neurologist who diagnosed him with idiopathic epilepsy. And they said they wouldn't do any drug intervention until he had 3 within a 90-day period, I think was some kind of rule of thumb like that, I think. But then he had another one, probably another 3 or 4 weeks later. So then they did start him on Keppra. So since about March 2017, he's been on Keppra. And it still had fairly regular seizures. In fact, let me share. I'm going to try sharing my screen. Hopefully you can see this. Here we go. Share. Okay, can you see that?
I can see it.
All right, good. Let me see here. PowerPoint. Is that working? Okay, so here's Dewey. So you can all see our lovely, cute, sweet Dewey. So he's, super sweet. He's a gentle giant. He weighs about 135 pounds. So if he has a seizure, it's pretty tough to move him or to pick him up or do anything with him. We kind of have to wait for it to pass. But he's just really sweet, lovable dog. Very sweet with our cat, which you can see here, the two of them together snuggled up. And, good with people, good with other dogs, just like I said, really friendly. So this is what I really wanted to share with you was I put together this little graph showing when he has seizures and, over history. So his first seizure was back here in January 2017. Each of these little blue dots indicates a seizure. If the dot is up here, it means he had 3 seizures in one day. Up here, 4 seizures in one day. In January, a year ago, he had many seizures nonstop, and we had to take him to the emergency vet. And first they put him on Valium to sedate him, and then they gave him phenobarbital and to bring him out of the seizure. or to bring him out of the sedation, and that seemed to work. So ever since then, he has been on phenobarbital in addition to Keppra. And because he's still continued to have seizures, every 2 to 4 weeks, there are a few different times where they increase the dosage. So here they increased in May of last year, they increased the phenobarbital dosage. A couple months later, they increased the Keppra dosage. Earlier this year, they increased the phenobarbital dosage again. He still has pretty regular seizures, as you can see down here, these blue dots. There are still, probably every 10 to 20 days, he has a seizure. He's had, I think, about 30 this year, like in 2020. They're all, since going on phenobarbital, they're a lot milder than they used to be. They, maybe 1 to 2 minutes. Much of the time he doesn't urinate, whereas previously he would always empty his bladder whenever he would have a seizure. The seizures are almost always in the middle of the night, sometime between, 11 a.m. and 2 or 3, or 11 p.m. and 2 or 3 a.m. Usually now not always, but usually he must sense it coming, because he sleeps in our bedroom. He'll get up and start pacing around. And that's often my warning sign that, okay, he might be about to have a seizure. So I go downstairs, I let him outside, and sometimes he has a seizure outside. And sometimes he'll pace around outside for a bit and then come back in, and maybe 10 minutes later have a seizure. So he does seem to have some forewarning that it's coming. There doesn't seem to be any kind of trigger. We haven't been able to link it with anything. So it just happens. After he has his seizure, usually lasts, like I said, a minute, 1 to 2 minutes maybe of the looks like he's running almost and panting really, really heavily, foaming at the mouth because he's panting so heavily. And then after that, he's just stiff and rigid and kind of breathing heavily for another 5 or 10 minutes. And then he gets up and he's okay to walk around, but just kind of out of it and not quite himself for another hour or so usually. So where he'll kind of pace around either outside or in the house, just kind of bumping into things, like just, again, not quite himself, not really responsive to us calling his name or anything, but pacing, drinking water, panting heavily for maybe another hour, and then he's fine after that. So that's just kind of, that's the life we have now with him. So I just, certainly, at night, if I hear him get up, I'm wondering, okay, is he just shuffling around to go lie somewhere else, or is he about to have a seizure? So it's usually when he's standing there right next to the bed, just panting and staring at me, that's usually, okay, I think he's gonna have a seizure. I'll take him outside and let him go pee if he needs to first, or, but every now and then he still has a seizure where it wakes us up, and it probably wakes him up too. There wasn't a forewarning, but like I said, they aren't as messy as they used to be, because most of the time he doesn't evacuate his bladder anymore when he's having the seizure. So I think the going on phenobarbital and then increasing the phenobarbital and Keppra dosages have probably helped with that. I think he takes phenobarbital twice a day. He takes Keppra 3 times a day. And I think that's kind of that's our experience with Dewey and with his seizures.
Hey, Tina.
Yes.
Have you tried any sort of tips and tricks with him? Any sort of, other sort of medication like the gelatin that Sue had mentioned earlier, or CBD oil or anything like that?
No, we haven't tried anything else. None of that stuff. We're, I guess this, what we've done so far seems to have helped him, and we acknowledge that, eventually someday he's likely to have cluster seizures, that he doesn't come out of it, and that may be the end, or maybe one day it's too much for his heart once he gets older. I don't really know. So we do know that this is going to probably lead to shorter life for him, but we haven't tried anything else. So maybe we will, but haven't really thought of it.
One thing that has been helpful for us, and I got this information from a epilepsy website. I'll share it with you all when I email it. I don't remember the name of it. It's Angel. I don't know. I will email it to you. But it's that ice cream, vanilla just like all natural vanilla ice cream, make sure it doesn't have any, what's the sugar substitute? That. So make sure it doesn't have that in it. Can help them recover from a seizure. In that article, I read that having a seizure is like running a marathon for them. So sometimes they'll be very, very hungry. Our dogs that have seizures tend to be a low glucose trigger, and that will boost their glucose as well, and it brings them out of it much faster. And we've had really good luck with CBD oil bringing them out of it and shortening the seizure a lot compared to not using it. So we've had success with both of those. We also, with the ice cream, we'll do like rescue remedy with it, like squirt it with the rescue remedy, and that seems to help them come out of it faster. So instead of being like kind of incoherent and wandering around for like an hour, it's more like 15 minutes to a half hour. So those two things have been helpful for us. Our dogs their seizures are far apart. They're, like 10 seizures in their entire lifetime. One dog had 3 in her entire lifetime. We started out with an Airedale, and his were overexertion related. So every time he overexerted, he was a Frisbee dog. Every time he overexerted himself, he would have a seizure. So if you could keep him from overexerting, you could totally control them. He was never on any medication or supplements. That was 30 years ago. We brought him to the vet right away. They suggested phenobarbital, but wait till he has more than one. And they were pretty infrequent once we started monitoring his exercise. With one of our dogs, it's definitely related to her heat cycle. We keep her on a dose of CBD oil, and that tends to regulate it completely. So with the CBD oil, she's okay. If we stop giving it to her, she'll cease. So that's kind of our history with seizures. We've never used any medication. Ours have all been few and far between. They throw up bile ahead of time, so we know we have a few seconds of time to run and grab the CBD oil. And if we can get it into them like immediately, sometimes they won't have a seizure at all. So that's our experience with them. Bev, I see you're on. I know you have a couple hints and tricks that you've shared with me. Maybe you can unmute and share with the group your hints with the rescue remedy.
Okay, can everybody hear me? We good to go? Okay. I can tell you the worst part in having a litter of puppies is finding out puppies in the litter of C's. It just wish it was the dogs that I kept that had it. So it hurts. I did have a litter, and I had one, and I lucked out where she sees maybe once or twice a year. Definitely not enough to put her on meds. We also live in an area that we are not required to do heartworm. We don't have fleas. So we don't need any of those meds in our dogs at all. So we were lucky that way. One of the things that I did in the beginning was I always had the bottles of rescue remedy, and I had 3 or 4 all over the house. So I always had it available when she went into a seizure, and no indication, just started hearing her thrash around. They were grandmas. And then, of course, it's easy to do that because they have big jowls, and just squeeze or pour in half a bottle into her mouth. And I just wanted to get it into her, and she came out of the seizure almost immediately when I had it into her. And then I decided to try the rescue cream because I thought it might have been safer just in case they might bite on the bottle. So I always kept her ears shaved, the inside of her leather ears shaved. And whenever she had one, I had rescue cream all over the house, several tubes all over the house, so it's easily accessible. And I would rub both ear leathers with rescue cream, and it would help bring her out quickly. But those are the two, that was pretty well the only, I lucked out. That was the only dog that I had that seizured in my home. I have bred a few from another litter. and did everything I could to help them out as well. But I hope that helps with anybody. I don't know if the rescue cream or remedy would interfere with any of the drugs, but maybe first few times it might be something to try before you start putting them on drugs. Any questions, comments?
I think stuff like that too, when they're infrequent and milder, you have a little bit more of the luxury to use those kind of remedies, where if they're having them so often, I don't think you have much choice but to try the
Hey,
medication.
Bev.
I'm wondering if you can do the rescue cream while they're on the drugs. That would be my question.
Yeah.
Bev, I have a couple questions. When you did that with the rescue cream, how much would you actually put on their ears, and would you continue to put it on afterwards?
I put a good amount, a good squeeze. I don't know, maybe size of a thumbnail in each ear, and it didn't take long to come out of it. But I would do it in both ears because, in my opinion, and it seemed to work. The faster absorbed into her system, the sooner she came out of the seizure.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know if you can mix it with drugs or. I just don't know that. That's what we use to bring her out. Oh, when it was a bottle, it was a small rescue remedy bottles. It was usually maybe half a bottle.
Did you continue to put it on afterwards, like every 10, 15 minutes, or was it just one and done?
Just once.
Okay. Thank you.
And you only did that when she was having a seizure, not like as a preventative, right?
That's right. Only when she had the seizure. But
Did
again,
you-
I had to keep her ear leathers on the inside shaved, cleaned.
Were there any markers or anything that would tip you off to say, hey, she's going to go into it soon?
This is many years ago, and I don't believe there ever was. Was there any? No, husband's here, and he said no, he doesn't remember. So
You just hear the thrashing.
we would just hear the thrashing and then go for her. And it wasn't necessarily at night. It was anytime, evening, daytime, nighttime. There was no definite time.
It was interesting to hear Dr. Munana in her webinar say that they were almost always at rest. I never knew that they almost always were at rest. Ours have always been kind of at rest, except for our Airedale that was overexerted, but that was interesting information. Does anybody, so normally we would have everybody, like if they had questions, enter them into the chat feature, but since we have a small group tonight, I don't think we really needed to do that and type it in. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to open your mic and ask questions.
Eileen, I saw you raised your hand. What you got?
I did. I have a question because I haven't had a chance to see, to re-listen to Dr. Marana's talk, but she recommended a lot of different flea and tick. I have to put my dogs on flea and tick because of where I live and what I do. And right now they were on Simparica. Now they're on the Cordelia, which are the Anders. And she seemed to mention those are more serious. So I was wondering if anybody remembers the least serious, because I'm going to have to start my puppy on them, and I don't want to start him on the Anders, you know, just in case. So that's fine.
So I rewatched it yesterday, and I did not write them down, but I know for but I was paying attention to what we use, and for heartworm, the HeartGuard and HeartGuard Plus ivermectin were on the low side of the scale, and the like Canine Advantix topical was on the low end of the scale. Those are the ones that I remember just because that they were used. If it's helpful for everybody, I can kind of make a slide out of that and send it along with the other reference material if you'd like.
Becky, did you have something to add to that?
Yes. Today I was looking at that because I was trying to look up information that would kind of be things that I could talk about tonight. And one of those things for the flea and tick medication, as I was searching, the Vectra 3D is the one that is least likely to cause a problem in the rankings of the various medications. And that's also the one that Petey's breeder, who's a physician, had researched and told me the same thing. And she said, don't dare give him anything that's in a pill form for flea and tick, but to use a topical. And so the Vectra 3D seemed to be, that was the one she recommended. And when I looked it up, it was the one least likely to cause problems.
Has anybody used Seresto, the collar? Okay. Do you like it?
I used it maybe a couple of years ago and didn't seem to do anything. And I put another one on Roger this year because ever since I moved to town, we have fleas.
No.
And it's been good this year.
Miss Nancy, do you have your hand up?
Miss Nancy. Most of you know that Carmen and I own Echo, who has had seizures since she was 4.5. I've been listening to everything that folks have said, and my heart, hurts with you. We were fine until Echo turned about 8.5 years old, and the whole family went down to Florida, and we left her with someone, and it was like something got triggered. And here we had a dog that for over 4 years only had 3 seizures, and now we're having them every month. The one thing that I want to bring up for you to consider with your vet is that my vet has trusted me, and it could be because I'm an RN, but I have Valium at home. So when she does go into a seizure, one of the things that I give Echo is 20 milligrams of Valium along with an extra 60 mgs of phenobarb. And that typically prevents her in going into a second seizure. It has worked well for us. I certainly don't want to tell you to absolutely do it. Always, ask your vet if you want to consider that. But that has worked well. Echo, after she gets out of seizures, walks around the house for about 3 to 4 hours, and she likes to talk and bark and do all sorts of happy things. But we have been very blessed that we've only had 1 seizure that had a second one with it.
Is she on a maintenance dose of phenobarbital? Did she
Yes.
take that?
Oh yeah, baby. She is on 60 mgs of phenobarb, 2 in the morning, 2 at night. She is on a total of 5 Keppra during the day and 3 zonicomides in the morning and 3 zonicomides in the evening. And you would think that I would have a dog that was totally passed out, couldn't walk, and she is running with the puppies.
This shows to go you that Otterhounds are different than some other breeds.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Do you have a question, Sherry?
It's Barrett this time. Plot twist.
I opened the corner of your screen with you.
So we have Weston is our oldest. He's 10. You'll hear Wyatt in the background pouting that she's not getting attention. But Weston had his first seizure when he was like 7, and he's only had 5 ever.
Maybe a few more.
Maybe give or take, and they were like once a year. The first time he had like once a month for like 2 or 3 months, and then it was like a full year and then a full year. And he just had one recently, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. The only things that we've seen consistently with him, because obviously they're not frequent, we've taken him to the vet and we've gotten him evaluated. They're never more than like a minute and a half. They're normally less than a minute long. They're the whole, you know, paddling, foaming at the mouth.
Yeah, they're
big. They're big, and he goes big, and he is big, so we can't pick him up and do that whole fun jam. But the one thing we do notice is he vomits before every single one. It's literally, he vomits, and
it's always in the day.
It's always during the day too. He's never had one in the middle of the night, and it's normally in the morning.
And it started out where something was wrong. He had some kind of liver infection, and his liver enzymes were real bad. That's how it started. And
we couldn't figure out if the seizure had caused the high liver enzymes or if the liver enzymes had caused the seizure, because we heard that there is like some sort of connection.
Epileptic connection.
But when he recently had this new one, because he was just at the vet for a different thing, he had gotten blood work done the day before and his liver was perfectly fine. So now we don't know if
and yesterday he had another set of blood tests and his liver was still fine. So we have no idea.
Anyone know anything about liver connection?
One of the things I might say though is you might think about participating in Dr. Munana's study. You have 2 Otterhounds. They are in your house. They are eating. And if his is in any way gut related, which is what her focus is, that would be wonderful. I would recommend it because so many people have one Otterhound who's seizing and not another one. So it's hard to participate in the study. But I wish you would, because his might be
so, Eileen, we're doing it.
Great.
Just whatever you say, we do.
That's a great point, Eileen, too. And we're actually submitting our dogs as well. You have to have one that seizes, one that doesn't, and they have to be on the same diet, but that's it. You fill out a questionnaire and you send in a poop sample, and that's it.
Just out of curiosity, has he ever had a thyroid panel done?
Yes.
I think he did. He had a thyroid scan.
Oh, yeah, because he had tumor. He has a tumor somewhere over here. Okay. And he did. No, they couldn't figure it out. It was
not a tumor.
It was some kind of growth. They don't know if it was an injury. It turned out it was a lymph gland that swelled.
Like
and it goes up and down. Yeah, they have no idea anything about it, but none of his blood work will show. It showed an infection, but that was it. So they treated it with antibiotics.
Okay.
And that was that related to it?
That was, so they wanted us to get
was
the
that
scan.
Related to the seizure?
Yeah, because they wanted us to get him scanned instead of getting an MRI first, because the MRIs were so expensive and he wasn't having enough of them for it to be considered. They didn't think it was an epilepsy issue and they didn't think it was chronic. So they were like, you could get his thyroid scan, because they had the liver enzyme thing. They thought maybe that was all connected.
Which we did.
So we did, and it was perfect. There was nothing wrong with it.
And then they said the only other thing they could do was an endoscopy, and they kind of didn't recommend it. So that was it.
And I mean, when he has these seizures and he throws up beforehand, is it always in the same area? Like always at home? You know, is he had it at the vet?
Always at home. The very first one he had was in a very horrible position. He was trapped between 2 pieces of furniture. But there were 2 at least that he went outside.
Yeah, like he knew it was going to happen.
And that was the most recent one. And then there was another one and then there was one they're all in different parts of the house, or he wants to go outside. But like the last one he started throwing up and I immediately followed him outside. And then he had the seizure. That was the first time I really noticed the losing the bowels and like the peeing. And that one was outside, so I got nervous that it was going to get overheated because it was like summertime and it was hot. But that one was like 45. That was the longest he took to come out of it, though.
Yeah.
Normally, the first couple, he just like gets up and is fine. But that one, he was probably really lethargic, slow to drink water, come out of it for a good
couple hours. Yeah.
Which
Becky,
meant
do you
he
have
could,
something to add? Go ahead. Sorry, go
So
ahead.
I was just going to suggest possibly feeding him more times during the day, spread out his food so that he has something like before he goes to bed at night, and
you could
perhaps
also feed him a little bit
We
later.
feed him 3 times a day.
so. But do you feed him like right before he goes to bed?
He's late,
No,
but not.
He never goes to bed because I never go to bed. So he doesn't have any schedule.
Except he's in bed. He's in bed right now.
sleeping right now.
Yeah.
He
So
doesn't have-
I found that my Allie would do better if I fed her something before she went to bed at night. And then, because she would throw up bile in the morning, and it didn't necessarily
puppy does
cause
that.
her to have a seizure, but she had an upset stomach easily. And I found that if I spread out her eating more, that it was better for her.
Mhm.
So it's just something to consider, giving him less food per time, but more frequent.
For us, even if we were able to like give a piece of like chicken jerky or dog biscuit or something like that to elevate their blood glucose level, that was helpful.
Yep.
Because they were definitely triggered by low blood glucose.
I give a large milk bone.
Yeah, that helped a lot.
He loves those.
A large one, and it helps.
Can you
Yep.
stop, please?
Here's the attention hog. So sorry.
Adorable.
We also fed Willie like 3 times a day. You know, she'd always have a big breakfast and then dinner time, and then she'd get a little bit before bed. And I don't know if that helped or not, but at least she was consistent with the food. You know, there was usually something in there processing. So, and probably a couple biscuits during the day too.
A couple.
That was kind of our question, just like tying together any of like the gastro.
Yeah, because they still don't know why he has them.
And they're still not super concerned because they're just not frequent. That's it.
Yeah, Eileen.
Go ahead, Eileen.
I'm not a vet, but one of the things I always find interesting is the first thing every vet does is do a blood test, right? And how many of them come back perfectly normal and your dog is very sick? I've had dogs who had perfectly normal blood tests a week before they died. You know, so it's funny when that's the first thing they say, and everybody says, and they're normal. They're normal. It's just a Otterhound thing, I think.
Yes, Marilyn.
I'm one of the lucky ones. Fortunately, I have not had either of my last 2 Otterhound Cs, but Barley had a sister, Winnie. Those of you who know Amelia from Facebook and Lovers, Winnie had 2 seizures in her life, and both of them were toward the last quarter or third of her life, and each one was stress related when she was being taken to a groomer that she didn't like. After the second one, Amelia put the information together and then had a mobile groomer come to the house, and she never took her back to the other one. Dog never had another seizure, which I found very interesting in terms of, we did talk about that in Dr. Munana's lecture, that there is a lot of time that you can associate stress with seizure oncome. So that plus, I have to appreciate what you said, Robin, early on about the dirty little secret about seizures, because when I first came into the club in the 90s, it was a dirty secret. People didn't talk about the fact that the dogs that they were getting seized, and they didn't tell puppy buyers that they were giving them dogs and, that they were paying for that came from seizing families. So the fact that all of you are able to share your information and be so willing to make me cry while I'm listening to everything, I have to appreciate that, because this life has changed with Otterhounds, and you know, we love this breed. It's a horrible disease. You know, every one of you that I know who have had dogs that have had seizures, love your dogs. It's not a question of ill treatment or not being cared for well, but we've got to know that information absolutely has to be out there. So I am thanking you. You know, my days of getting another puppy are long gone, but if I were to do that, I would be so careful, so cautious about the lineage of what I was getting. And I appreciate the fact that all of you are being so open about it. Thank you.
I want to amplify that, Marilyn. Thank you. That's a great point. And again, I can't thank you enough. There's just not enough words to thank you all for being here and sharing your story, because, you know, that it's not something that anybody wants to talk about. It's miserable. It's sad. It hurts your heart. But it's, like I said earlier, it's I think helpful to the community as a whole. So again, thank you.
Yep.
Does anybody else have any questions? No more questions? Well, I appreciate everybody being here. I'm going to send you all an email that has the resources that I have had from in the past, just some websites and stuff like that. Whether it helps or not, you know, maybe it will. It's at least interesting to take a look at. And for the, we'll put an ad in for our next Otter Talks. We're going to have a health issues big and small Otter Talk on September 17th with Joey Gregory. She's going to tackle some of those subjects and hopefully give us some information on what medications and stuff like that Otterhounds might be more susceptible to than your average normal or other breeds. Then on September 29th, Eileen is going to give us an all about tracking Otter Talk. Yay, Eileen. And then on October 14th, Allison Rosenberg and a couple other panelists are going to join us for a scent detection and nose work Otter Talk. And if any of you have any topics that you would like to learn about, or if there's any topics that you're knowledgeable about and you would like to join us again as a panelist, please, by all means, let us know. And also, all the Otter Talks are for everybody in the whole community. You don't have to be a member of the club to join in, so feel free to spread the word. Becky?
Yes, I'm going to send you, Robin, a couple of the websites that I looked at today, so you could add those in. The one from CSU and also the one about the medications for fleas and ticks. And then just a reminder about the annual meeting for the Otterhound Club is coming up.
Yep, the 16th at 7:30. The annual meeting is coming up. It's going to be on Zoom. If you haven't signed up yet and want to sign up, there's a link on the Otterhound Lovers Facebook page. There's a link on a member email that we have sent out. There's a postcard that I think most members got. But yeah, please join us for the annual meeting. It should be informative for everybody. Anything else from anybody? Applause, applause, applause for everybody that came and everybody that was here and everybody that participated. I really appreciate all of you being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Carmen, thank you. Appreciate
Yes, thank you from the bottom of our hearts. This is not an easy subject. It's not something I would ever wish unto my worst enemy. It is something that, you know, people and dogs go through together. And we are very lucky to have our hounds, and sometimes they're very lucky to have us. So thank you to the panel. Best of luck, or best wishes to everybody that's dealing with this at this current moment. And remember to hug your hounds.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Carmen. Well said. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thanks. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Bev.